everyone, and welcome to Raising Remarkable Teenagers, another beautiful, beautiful episode. And as you can see, we've got two beautiful faces here, right? As
Yes.
always, my name's Angela, and Angela Karanja from Raising Remarkable Teenagers. And our aim here is to give you strategies, snippets, and steps that can help you raise highly effective teenagers. And we want you to have a fulfilled life as a parent. We want you to have a peaceful home. And most of all, we want you to have that enriched relationship with your teenager. And it's in understanding how the young people are changing, how their brain is changing, how their bodies are changing, that we, as I always say, can learn to parent them with compassion. We can learn to, and then guess what? Today we've got Dr. B, and Dr. B's specialty is the developing teenager's brain. Did you hear that? The developing teenager's brain. You know, you guys, I keep talking about the teenager's brain, and I'm sure most of you just say, "Oh, come on, Angela, just get on with it." But I keep saying it's by understanding what's going on within their brains, what's brewing in their brains and their bodies, that we can parent them with compassion, with love, with logic, and just to help them, to support them as they navigate these high waters, because they truly are high waters. So, welcome, Dr. B, and so grateful to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor, and I'm thrilled to be talking with your listeners today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we want to hear this perspective of the teenager's brain. And I know we spoke about you talking about especially ADHD, which I have spoken to some of the parents about the atypical young person, because not all of our young people are different, and us being able to embrace them as they are. And when you said to me that you are going to cover this ADHD, I was like, yes, we've got some here, because sometimes we label all of our hyper kids as ADHD. So could you just explain to us what that is and what that means, and what to look out for, and how to parent them the best way we can without going insane? Yeah.
Yes, let's see. Where should we start? Let's see. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about, as you mentioned, is the brain, right? So as the brain develops, you're an adolescent will not have a fully complete frontal lobe precortical area up here in the front of the brain. It won't develop till they're 25.
Yes.
So the prefrontal area we're going to talk about a little bit more, but that's involved in decision making, impulse control, all the things that teenagers don't do, but we're expecting them to do, and they do have some control over it. But first of all, parents should know that the brain just doesn't develop completely until 25 in that age range. The ADHD brain, one thing I want to talk about first of all is that evolution. Humans have evolved, and we've kept certain traits for a reason, and we've kept other traits, and other traits have fallen aside, genetically speaking. When you look at an individual with an ADHD brain versus a normal functioning brain, there are 5 areas of the brain that are not as big in development. 2 of them, the specific that I want to talk about, are the amygdala and the hippocampus. Now, these areas are involved in the emotional part of your brain, emotional regulation. And so when you start to think about ADHD, we often think about hyper, crazy, not paying attention, but we don't think about maybe the emotionality and the overreactivity that children with ADHD have. I'm going to get back to that in just a minute, but I'm going back to just the regular development of the brain. So when you look at scans, individuals with the ADHD, their brain doesn't have the same blood flow. You also have 5 different areas that are not as developed as a typically developing brain. And I don't want to say normal because there is no such thing as quote normal when it comes to this kind of stuff.
That's right.
And that's
And
right, right?
thank you so much, because this is what I keep saying to all of us, including myself, because I have a teenager, and also I have my daughter's my daughter's friends. I'm their mother at some points. I become their mothers when
Yeah,
I'm, and I talk about that there's nothing normal, because we are all
no,
so different. So who decides what's normal? It's
that's
just
right.
a variation of another person, isn't it? So
It
I'm so glad
absolutely
you
is.
said that. I'm so glad.
Good. I'm glad that, because there's, we're not going to get, I can do tangents all day long, so I'm going to stay very focused, but one tangent is language. We have to use language that's appropriate. And when you say normal, there is stigmas associated with that I'm not normal, I must be different, different is bad. I mean, we can do a whole nother podcast about language and the words that we use, but we're going to go back to the brain. So we have typically developing and atypically developing. The other thing about individuals with ADHD is their brain develops at a pace of 1 to 3 years behind a typically developing brain.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that you may see your child's peers being able to do with planning, organization, your child still may get there. It just might take them a little bit longer. So stay calm, stop comparing, okay? Now
Absolutely.
back to back to evolution, right? The reason we have people or individuals with a atypical brain development is for a reason. And I want to take us back to thinking about when, and it wasn't that long ago, when we lived in hunter-gatherer tribes. Okay, so we had small communities. We didn't have Walmart we could go to. We didn't have you guys, we didn't have, Marks and Sparks, Sainsbury's, you guys. So over there, Tesco, right? So we didn't have that. So what happened, and what I believe evolved over time, where certain individuals, regardless of gender, develop traits of ADHD, that type of brain thinking. And I want to classify those as hunters within this tribal type of mentality. You have hunters, and then you have the gatherers,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the farmers. These are 2 very distinct type of brains that have very distinct roles in our society. Okay, so the farmers, they're planners. They think, they plan ahead, they're organized, their rows in their fields are straight, they're not quirr. These are our accountants. These are our tax lawyers. These are individuals within our society who can do stuff now that requires that type of focus.
Yeah.
Back in the days, we also needed individuals who could hunt animals.
That's right.
We need people who are quick,
Yeah.
who see and they respond.
That's
and
right.
They respond. And we need that. And so they were the ones who can, ADHD brain, you're out in the woods, you're active, you're moving, it's exciting to you, you're on a chase, you're hunting, you're looking, your brain is going nonstop. So people say, well, what about, I know my kid can play video games all day. Okay, that's called hyperfocus. And that is a trait of an ADHD brain. So a hyperfocus would be, I see a lion, he's in my eyes, I'm going to focus, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going, and but then I hear a twig snap.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was a farmer, I would keep going. But because I'm a hunter, I look, and somebody's going to attack me.
That's right.
So I've just turned because I've been distracted, but now I'm alive because I heard the distraction. So I don't want to talk oodles and oodles about this, but this is just a starting place for you to start thinking about, what is my child? Are they a more farmer, or are they more of a hunter? And you don't have to have hyperactivity for ADHD. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So developmentally speaking, the ADHD brain is needed in society.
It is.
I often in the States, people will say, oh, everybody in America has ADHD and nobody in France has ADHD. Why is that? Well, I say to them, okay, this is just my theory as well, but America's a very young country. And who comes to a country? Who moves and uproots their entire lives to move? People who are adventurers, people who are explorers, people who have nothing else to lose, people with so ADHD brains are moving to this new world. So now we have a country full of people,
who are seeking adventure,
Yes, exactly. So those are just just a quick throwdown of like my understanding and a way to explain, I think, why we need individuals with this type of brain firing and mentality or functioning, and why we need both sets. So it's not one's better than the other. It's unfortunate that our school systems were created for farmers. It's fine, you know, you're off in the summer, especially in America, to go plow the fields.
Yeah.
So our school system is very set up for benefiting farmers. The offside of that is that the hunters that have to sit in class all day don't do well.
Aww.
They have a hard time in class focusing, and you have it over there too in the UK, you know, and they end up often getting in trouble, being labeled a problem child. And the fact is that their brain's not made to learn in a very rigid, structured environment like that.
That's right. But wow, that's such a good analogy of the brain. Actually, I have heard of it, but the way you've explained it, I'm thinking, wow, wow. And to be honest, I think I tell my friends and everyone, I think I am ADHD. Obviously, it was never diagnosed because
right.
I grew up in Kenya and there was no diagnosis of that. But I was that kid. I mean, that's why, like you said, that's why I'm in England, because you just get up and go.
Yeah, I'm over this. We need a new adventure. Let's go.
Thinking, what's the new adventure? What is this? What is this? And it's okay for us to embrace these people.
Yes.
They are our creators. They are our inventors. You know, these are people who think of things and like bring it, bring it to life. They don't have time to analyze, to do all those things. I mean, I just want to quickly say to you that when I was in uni, one of my dissertation head was a very good friend of mine now, but she was a professor and she had ADHD, and she says, and she says to me, I think I know why you chose me.
You guys vibe at the same frequency.
Do you know, because I like that vibe. I want someone who can come with me when I'm thinking, I don't think this is correct. Someone who can, you know, and that's, I love that. And I like to tell parents, and especially when I work in school, I love those kids. Why? Because they think of something and they tell you. Someone else would be offended, but they think of something and they tell you, and I'm like, whoa, tell me more. Tell me more. You know?
Right. The filter is not there.
Absolutely. Let's carry on.
Yeah, right. And I as well have ADHD symptoms, and that's interesting that you bring it up. So I've tested hundreds of kids. What I used to do was neuropsychological testing, and often the two parents would come in and they'd sit down, and I wouldn't even have to test the kid before I knew that he probably did have ADHD, looking at the parents, because it's genetic. And so I would say to the parents, which one of you, has troubles with XYZ? All the time they'd be like, oh, it's this one. You just know. And so my boss thought I had it as well. He's like, oh, you have ADHD. I took all the tests and I beat him. Not that it's like a game to beat or anything like that, but I have so much symptomology. And the other thing with ADHD brain that we're going to talk about a little bit later is that you have a comorbid diagnosis, and often individuals with ADHD brain have learning disabilities.
Yeah.
So I suffer from dyslexia. And school was not super easy for me. Writing was very tricky. Even now, like looking at words to pronounce, I'm like, oh my God, I can't say that. What is that? What? So it's a whole other way of just thinking and processing information.
And just Dr. B, before you carry on, I just want to tell my viewers that, and look at Dr. B. She's a doctor now. So don't give up on your young person because someone has told them that they are ADHD, or because unfortunately, even in this profession, we tend to label. Yeah, and I can say we are guilty of that. We can label without explaining. There's one thing I have learned to do, and I've become very aware. When I mention, I think this could be the condition that your young person has, I always add that I know people who are doing well despite.
Yes.
I know people who, and I mention them by name. I mention them, I look them up, and I will mention, and it's in all profession, you will find them.
Yes.
Why? Because someone supported them despite of the label that they were given. Unfortunately, sometimes we can settle in those labels and box
Mm.
ourselves. And that's what I say to parents, no matter what, don't box your child and think this is it. At the end of the day, we are human beings and we are living and breathing. And that which gives us breath and life is constantly growing and it's got potential. So none of us should ever say, this is it for my kid, just
That's right.
because, yeah, those labels have their place because it's also good to understand how someone learns, but let us
Yes.
not think this is it. Let never think this is it. Always encourage your young person to reach further, to go faster, to go forward. And that is something
Yes.
I keep telling parents because I know for sure, and I have worked with young people. Some of them are in prison for things they did out of the spur of the moment. And I said to them, it doesn't matter where you are now. You can grow. You can grow as long as you are alive. There's that life
Yes.
that life that whispers to the grass, the blade of grass, grow, grow. It whispers in your child on a daily basis. And it's up to us as parents and educators and supporters to actually support that life that's growing through them. So, well, let me not talk too much. Let me leave it
That's
to
okay. I love what you're saying. It's all absolutely true.
you.
And, as you're speaking and saying, well, Dr. B was able to do XYZ with her disabilities, and because they're labeled a disability, right? A learning
Yes,
disability.
yes.
Um, there's two sides to every sword. So a kid with ADHD or an individual or an adult, we've got energy to spare more than life. We
Definitely.
have an ability to connect to people. So I think the twist for parents is to say this is not going to limit you. We need to
Uh-huh.
focus on what the strengths are
Yes.
from this,
Mhm.
utilize it, embrace it, and make sure that we put you on a path towards success. If
Mhm.
you come from a family of a bunch of accountants and you've got ADHD, your child does, they're not going to be successful as an accountant. So why push them towards something that's not going to be great for them? Maybe they're going to be better being like a wilderness coach or somebody
Absolutely.
who car salesmen often have ADHD. They're great. They're energetic personality, think, on their feet all day. It's not the same thing day in and day out. I think of also police.
Yeah.
Often, many of them also have an ADHD type of thinking and processing, and you need that for the job. That keeps you safe.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up.
That's really good.
Um, Oh, the other thing I want to talk about a little bit about the brain, and I'm not going to get into medication because I can't pronounce half of them anyways because of my dyslexia. So, but
I'm loving
just
you.
keeping it real, keeping it real. So, with the ADHD brain, there's two neurotransmitters that the brain's not quite getting: dopamine and noradrenaline. Dopamine. So imagine a bunch of grapes. You have a bunch of grapes, and you've taken all the grapes off of the thing, and you're left with just the stems.
Yeah.
So you have a stem here and stem here, and I guess I do it with my hands. And there's a bunch of whole receptors in between here, synapses, and they're shooting dopamine, whatever. So what happens in the ADHD brain is either one of two things. There's not enough dopamine being released in the system,
Hmm.
or your receptor sites are not picking up the dopamine.
Wow.
So somehow that dopamine is just kind of getting stuck in the receptor sites. And I
Mhm.
hear often, I've had a lot of parents come in and they'll go, oh, my kid needs ADHD meds, but I don't want to medicate my child. And to that, I say, I get that. There are alternatives that we can try. But if
Mhm.
your child was diabetic and they needed insulin,
That's
would
right.
you deny them that?
Mhm.
So when your child's brain isn't functioning and it needs dopamine, would you deny your child that? Now, the medications, there are so many. They've even just come out with a new medication that the child takes at night so that it's released so that the morning time they wake up and are able to get out of the house and get focused, because it takes about 30 minutes for the medicine to kick in for medicines. But, and then so when a child does get the right medication at the right dose, and that's another thing that I used to do a lot when I was testing, I'd recommend a medication, they'd go to their pediatrician or psychiatrist, they would come back and I would retest on certain tests. And there was some improvement, but not a lot. So I would say increase the dose. They'd go back, get a higher dose, come back, and it'd be in the perfect, the sweet spot. So, you know, when you go in as a parent, if you do try medication and it doesn't work right away, it might need adjusted just a little bit. Don't automatically think this isn't working. And I had a kid, I had this child who's 16, and he didn't have the hyperactive aspect of ADHD, but he was the sweetest kid, very, very bright. He was struggling in school, time for college to come up, and he came in, we tested him, and he had severe ADHD, and nobody knew, and you couldn't really see it because he wasn't hyper. He took medication, came back in for his test that day, and it was the first day he'd had meds, and I said to him, how do you feel? And he was 16, and he started crying. And he said, this is the first time in my life I have felt peace in my brain, and I've been able to focus. And it kind of broke my heart. Like, I get teary just thinking about it. But the fact that he had spent so long struggling so hard, and so many times we can't see this. This is an internal struggle of our children. And so if there's something that,
I was just about
go ahead.
and especially those ones who don't have the hyperactive beta bit, they just have the ADD. It's
the attention,
really hard to actually spot, because like you said, he's just a sweet, quiet kid, and unfortunately we don't tend to bother with those who don't bother us, yet
that's right,
they are suffering in silence, right? So
yes. So I just share that, so parents think that it's not, there are stigmas with medications. I get that. But when you think of it at a basic chemical level, your kid's not getting the dopamine they need. Are we going to help them? Okay, so from that, we're going to move on to the next section, because it totally relates to this. Okay, so then you go into what I like to call differential diagnosis. The kid's coming in, he's hyper, he's depressed, he's mad, he won't listen to his parents, he's, you know, two fingers to everybody. I love this, because in the States, nobody knows what that means.
No, the one here, the one. I'm not gonna put my
over there. It's so nobody knows what that means, but with the kid with that attitude, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they come into my office, all spit and vinegar, and we do a bunch of tests. So what the testing does, and why it's important to get your child tested, is because it helps tease out what is the causation for the inattention. What's the causation for the hyperactivity? Okay. And things can be subtle. Some things, it's also, did the chicken come first or the egg? You have to have somebody who's really good at diagnosing, because I've seen kids go in, I've had kids I've tested, you put their numbers into a machine, the machine prints out a report, and the report says the child is da 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 da. But as you read it, you're like, that's not that kid. This isn't the kid who sat in front of me. Other reports have to be done. You have to do objective measures, which is, 2 + 2 is 4. Do they know that? Who was the first, whatever, prime minister? They need to know those things. But there's also objective measures. How do they cope under stress? When they're doing some of these tests, as a therapist, I'm watching their behavior. Are they sweating? Have they blanked out? Those things are important to know and observe when you're testing. So that I think that separates great diagnosticians from those who just say, oh yeah, you fit the criteria, there you go.
From those who just tick the boxes, tick the boxes, and they're not willing. And that's another thing. It's good you brought it up, because I always encourage parents to have more expert input into it, and actually go to someone who is willing to take time, not only to tick the boxes, although the boxes are good for indicative purposes, but also to be able to observe someone who who can make that judgment call, someone who has a discernment from just
Yes.
observing and thinking, actually, there's more to this. This kid has this. I think there's more to it. And also someone who's willing to listen to the parents'
Yes.
observation. Because remember, when we work with kids, we only see them for an hour too. But
Right.
you as a parent, you spend 24/7. Well, not 24/7 because especially
Nowadays you are with COVID. Oh wait, you guys are going to school. I forget because you guys go to school over here. Many schools kids aren't going, but yes, you're
yeah,
with your kids a lot more.
yeah, yeah. What we want to say is that you spend more time with your kids. So um, go to people who actually trust you. People who when you say to them, when my daughter is making her cup of tea, she blanks out. I notice that there's something, and someone who's willing to just listen to your whatever it is, well, whatever strange things you bring to the table. Yeah,
Right. Yes,
yeah,
definitely. You have to. It's the small things like that are so important. He doesn't listen.
yeah,
And so one of the main criteria for ADHD is that this behavior happens in multiple settings.
yes,
So if your child is only acting out at home, I want to also say though, excuse me, your child is going to act out more at home no matter what. Take a deep breath. They're going to be worse for you than they are for everybody else because you are their safe spot.
yes,
You are their home. Yes.
yeah.
So I think parents need to recognize it. Why do you act like such a jerk when you're home? Like you're so great at your so-and-so's house. Well, because they're on their best behavior. You're home. You're safe.
In
So
fact,
I want parents.
when you say that, I usually say to the parents, then you should be so thankful that they're not
Right.
acting out like that in someone else's houses, right?
Yes.
That means they are capable of being at their best.
Boom.
And when they go out in the world, you can trust them. Yeah, you
Yes.
can trust them to be all right. So when they come to the house, sometimes it's okay. I mean, we don't want to be punching bags, but
Right. No, of course.
it's okay. It's okay for them to play out because they still want to be kids. Actually,
Yeah, they do.
they want to play. They want to experiment. They want to do all these things, which other people out there haven't got patience with them. We
Yeah.
have the patience to just we have the patience to have the eyes rolled.
Yeah, that's right. Turn your back, roll your eyes, pretend you didn't see it. Nobody's
Right.
going to get stitches. Pick your battles. It's like a daily pick your battles game, parenting,
That's right.
So the differential diagnosis, parents, it's so important for clinicians to hear from you what is happening and what's happening and at where. So so the testing, what that does is that helps me say, is this child anxious, depressed, or do they have ADHD? What is the primary diagnosis?
Yes.
So an individual who is depressed
Mhm.
are often, or anxious, they're very different symptomology, but what happens in the brain is similar in the sense that depression, brain's not really firing, you're not paying attention, you're thinking other thoughts, you're very distracted. Anxiety, again, you are in your head, you're worrying, you're thinking, and that causes what is labeled a pseudo ADHD type profile. So yes, it's inattention, but it's not organically based in brain structure wirings that are different. I didn't want to say deficit. they're different.
Yeah.
And so trying to tease out those nuances of that, because a lot of kids with ADHD also become depressed because they don't have the impulse control to make relationships with their peers. They don't have the planning skills to do that stuff either. Or sometimes tics is a comorbid thing. Somebody has tics, maybe they make noises they're unaware of. And those types of things will automatically be picked up by peers, talked about, they'll be teased.
Yeah.
And so what comes first?
Yeah.
The other one, oppositional defiant disorder, ODD. Those are the bad kids, these kids who come in and they're cussing and they just have no respect for authority. So many times teenagers, when I see them by the time they're teens, this all started when they were 5 or 6. They couldn't sit in class. They kept getting looked over, passed over.
Yeah.
They kept being graduated. And so to cope with that, they start drinking energy drinks. A lot of kids will have drink Monster drinks, caffeinated drinks, Red Bull, those types of things up, and they're able to focus a little bit on that. So that's a self-medicated type of thing. They'll also try to self-medicate the emotional pain they're feeling with alcohol, drugs, promiscuous sex, anything to just feel normal and to feel connected. And this all stems from just having potentially a brain that doesn't work like everybody else, but you need parents who support this. You need a school that recognizes this. Do you guys have, we call them here a 405 plan, but we have things set in place for individuals with ADHD, like they get extended time testing for tests. You have that over there as well.
We do have that additional, we have that additional time, extra room, like some of them who are, for example, if they feel anxious or something, they're taken to a different room, or they sit at the back of, there is additional support.
Oh, good. Okay. But the stigma is still pretty high over there.
And that's the one thing I keep, like when I work in colleges and schools, I try to see how can we minimize this stigma around, it's all good when we have this additional help. But then you see some of the kids, especially teenagers, they will refuse the help because they don't want to be singled out. And we all of us, and I think it's a world thing.
It's society.
Yeah, we have to go in there and say, it's okay. First of all, it's okay to have that help. It's okay to have support. And then on top of that, it's not something we should be ashamed of, right? But it's something we have to work with from home and school, everywhere, really, everywhere.
It's like an individual, an invisible disability. So when we talk about, privileges and individuals and what privileges you have, a privilege to be able to walk up and down stairs, that's a privilege. Some kids are in wheelchairs and we see that and we make accommodations. When we have a mental illness, that is not the same. The stigmas are huge. It is, your fault, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What's the matter with you? And those words, they're still so heavy over society, in the sense that if you come out and talk about it, the only people who can really talk about it successfully are those success stories, right? Oh, Dr. B, she had dyslexia and some crazy ADHD. She had an awful upbringing, some serious trauma. Look at her now. She's doing okay. But why can't we talk about and support that to the kid down the street who goes to work every day, works a 40-hour week, and that for them is success.
Absolutely.
It has to be seen as that. And I think until more people start talking about it, and people in positions of influence like you and I, where we say, yes, that is okay. It is totally okay to have a vocational type job education. We need it.
Absolutely.
Stop pushing everybody to go to college. And that's different for the UK. I know you guys don't have that quite as much as we do here in the States, but college isn't meant for everybody, and not every brain is meant for that type of thinking and work.
But you say that, but I'll tell you, even some of my friends' kids and that, it's even those who don't have ADHD, pushing their kids to go to college and university is a big thing. And I have to keep saying to parents, it's okay for a kid to go to have apprenticeship. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay for them to become an athlete and never went to, it's fine. It's okay for you to be a builder. It's okay for you to be a plasterer. It's okay.
And a lot of the jobs that you're talking about are perfect for individuals who have ADHD.
Absolutely.
You're out, you're working with, you're the hunter. You have to do those, and those jobs are needed. And the funny thing is they get paid pretty well.
Actually,
you look at some of these jobs who they go to 4 years of school and then they end up being a telemarketer at a bank, which is fine. I'm not saying anything, but you've got debt, you're making whatever, and then your cousin who didn't go to school has already got savings up the wazoo and is making good money.
That's right. It's interesting how, I don't know how we made bad good. I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we manage to, and we can see. But then what's happening these days, interestingly, is our kids, especially teenagers, they're looking and seeing, actually, mom, you're forcing me to go to university. My cousin down there, he's got an electrician. He's an electrician. He's doing so well, and he
Yeah,
never went to school. He just went for some apprenticeship somewhere, and look at him. He's doing
and
so
that's
well,
school.
and he chooses the time he wants to go and work. They, they look at that and they're thinking, I think we are being deceived here. They think they're being deceived over here, right?
Yeah, getting the wrong end of the stick, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I agree. So I just want to make sure I get all my stuff covered here. But the back to the differential diagnosis and to the parents allowing their kids to be what they want to be and helping them to be the best that they can be. I
Yes.
think that it all stems from acceptance of self.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes parents, what we want for our children or how we would like our children to be isn't how they are or what they want. And so we as a parent have to go, wait a minute, take a step back, check yourself before you wreck yourself and the relationship with your child. If you're trying to force them in, into a way of life that's not for them. And then also, were you forced? I find often parents who are forced tend to sometimes force their kids because it's like this is what we do. This is
Yes.
what we do in our family. You do it, her. And that doesn't work that way. It just makes people resentful. It makes
Absolutely.
angry kids, angry parents who then wake up in 60 years and go, who is this I'm married to? Why am I living in this house? I wanted to be a gypsy. I wanted to live a gypsy life.
That's right. Huh?
So do it.
And
Yeah.
and it's interesting you say that, because it's very important for us to support. And like I said earlier about life, there is a reason that each one of us came to this life. Life had, I mean, whichever. Some people I know, they believe in God. Some people believe in different religion, all sorts of religion. But I tend to say that life, there is a reason that life put you in here, because
Yeah.
that, and there is that life that breathes you, that life that that keeps your heart moving when you don't know you're asleep. There is a purpose inside of you. And what I always encourage parents is, these children, these kids were given to us by life, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
belong to us. There's Khalil Gibran, there's a poem I really like by Khalil Gibran. It says, our children are not our children. They are the product of life wanting to express itself. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can understand that our children are actually not our children, so what do we do? What is our role in their life? Our job is to continue facilitating that life, facilitating that life. We are not the ones, we are supporting, we are guiding,
Mm-hmm.
we're guarding them. But then remembering that life is driving them, yeah? And
Mm-hmm.
always ask yourself, in everything, even I have to do that myself, in every relation I have with a young person, am I am I constricting life, or am I a conduit of life?
Uh-huh.
Right? So when I speak, am I speaking life? When I relate with them, even when I'm telling them off, is it
Mm-hmm.
life giving? Right?
Right.
Is it life giving, or am I constricting and killing life? I have to be very aware, because obviously my background, it wasn't very life giving. It was, you're constantly cut down, you're
Yes.
constantly abused, you're constantly, it's like someone's trying to minimize you and
Mm-hmm.
cut you. Any bird that tried to come up, it's chopped off.
Yes.
That's the way I grew up. But thankfully, I have learned that I'm supposed to be an enhancer of life, an enhancer of life. I don't always do it, so I'm not sitting here thinking that I don't want anyone to sit there thinking, oh, Angela, all she does is give life. I know, and I'm very guilty.
You're human.
Yeah, and I'm very guilty of having said things I shouldn't have said, having done things I shouldn't have said. But it's not, this is not a session to beat ourselves up. It's about that awareness that, everything I do, for example, even in our judgment, everything I do, am I a constrictor of life or am I a conduit of life?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a great way to look at it. And the language, and when you speak about, when you're talking to a kid, when you say constrictor of life, that's when your kid says, oh, I want to do this with the mud. And you say no, because you don't want to deal with the mess. But your kid they want to have a moment of experience. And I too find myself going, is this about me or is this about them? And do I let them do this? And it's so important to have those, it takes just a couple seconds to reflect.
That's right.
But yes, to not squash out that candle, that passion inside each of our children. They all have it. Every child has passion in them. And I've seen it. I mean, I've worked with kids of all ages. And it's so sad to me when I see a parent kind of squashing that passion because it doesn't necessarily fit their religious views, or it doesn't fit their cultural views.
That's right.
And I feel like that's so many of us I want to say, we're the walking wounded, but all of us come to the table with a bag of crap. And we've all been through stuff. And it's our job to say, this is mine, and I'm not going to take it out on my child. And I want my child to have a better opportunity in life than I did. So how can I stop whatever negativity I had moving forward to allow my child to have what we weren't afforded? I was told, I was too loud my whole life. I'm too loud. I laugh too loud. I'm just too in your face. And so my whole life, I feel like I've lived with a dimmer switch on, trying to contain my energy. But and then I'll meet a friend or two that just accept me. And so when we're by ourselves, I can be as crazy as I want.
And you start thriving, isn't it? When you meet those people who allow you to shine, you start to thrive, right?
That's right. And that's all you have to do is support them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I was always told I'm loud, I'm out there, I take risks and all that.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of my listeners know, including my first marriage, someone trying to squash you, and I'm telling you, and I'm not saying anyone should leave their partner or anything.
Right.
The moment I left, I started to thrive. And that's when I realized, unfortunately, what had been happening is that every time an idea came up, it was chopped. So I had when you chop a tree that's growing, it stands.
Yeah.
It becomes a stagnant something. And it was so scary. In fact, at one point I was so scared. I said, oh my God, all my dreams almost got killed in there, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's very unfortunate, because you would expect someone who came from an abusive family, they wouldn't go into this. Even though when I was younger, I used to say to myself, I will never allow myself to be in such an abusive relationship. But
right.
I, for whatever reason, I found myself following the same route.
It's unconscious. Yeah? It's totally unconscious. And you can never blame yourself for that, because you didn't know. But once you recognized it, you got out of it. And I think that we often will say, well, I deserve it now. Oh, here I am. I didn't want to end up marrying my, father, or reenacting the relationship my parents had. But we do it because in our minds, subconsciously, that's what we know. And that's what we feel is, quote, normal.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what happens.
Absolutely. So I think it's very important for us to be aware of what, like you said, to be aware, especially when we are parenting, of what we are bringing to the table, in terms of what am I asking my child to do? What am I stopping them from doing? Why is it my own, am I enforcing my own nonsense to them, or to call it
Yeah,
that way? And just to be very, very aware. Yeah. Wow.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I know we're running close to on time,
Yes,
running out of time, but I wanted to give parents a few, some quick things about what do I do? So my kid's
absolutely.
got
That's, I was
I
gonna
think he's got
come there.
ADHD.
I was gonna come there and ask
Oh,
you.
good.
Yeah, because I want you to tell the parents how they can find you, because I don't think we are done with you. You've got so much, you've got, you know, especially for some of us parents who have atypical young people, there's so much to learn from you. There's so much encouragement to get from you. There's so much empowerment to receive from you. And I think we should be having you another time as well.
I would love it.
So what I would like you to do is to just tell the parents where they can grab you, get keep the conversation going with you, and before that, just maybe three things you would like or you would advise a parent to do this week to change how they relate with their young people and to improve their relationship with their young people.
Absolutely. Okay. So one thing I would say, I want to say this one thing really quickly about ADHD. So research has done studies, and cognitive behavior therapy is one of the best ways to help work with managing and learning how to organize, prioritize, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Medication also works. The When you have individual therapy alone and medication alone, the efficacy is about the same. So they work about the same.
Mm.
But when you combine them, oh, actually, medicine works better than therapy alone. But when you combine them, it is like above and beyond the moon. Parents are on the same board, kids are on the same page. The medication is giving them what they need for their dopamine. And from that point, you start teaching the life lessons. You start building those new neural pathways, those pathways that say, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can focus. Yes, yes, yes. So I just want parents to know therapy plus medication is going to be the best route if your child does indeed have a organic attention disorder. If they don't, and it's depression and anxiety, there's other, cognitive behavior therapy works really well with that as well. I'm going, getting it out. Music therapy works. So I have lots of ideas. So I'm going to tell you how you can get to me or how you can reach me. And that would be at parentingadvice.net is my website. But my biggest, I would say, way of interacting, which I think is really great, is I started a parenting group on Facebook. And whether you have a Facebook account or not, just join just to be in this group if you wanted. And it's called Dr. B, a perspective on parenting. And you are a member, so people, if they're friends with you on Facebook, they can maybe find me on that. But I post stuff daily, 3 or 4 posts. Sometimes it's just funny things that parents will go, "Oh my God, I get it. She gets me. I feel heard."
I
Sometimes
know that.
it's yeah, right. And some
By the way, I'm a member of Dr. B's group, and she's so funny. It's so funny. Some of the you will feel at home. I promise you will feel at home there, because I laugh sometimes and I'm like, oh, this is so funny, and it just lifts your mood, and also it makes you feel and know that you're not alone. You're not
That's right.
alone, right?
That's the big thing. I think parents feel that it must be me. I'm doing something wrong. You're not. All of us are struggling. Even people with all the degrees and the accolades, we're all struggling. Okay. God, raising kids is no easy task. Okay. So, so find me on Facebook, and I respond to people. We have back and forth. We talk. And the funny thing is my mother's on there. So, and she doesn't have the same last name as me, but sometimes she'll post stuff and I'll roll my eyes. Kind of go, there's my mother. But I love her, and I have friends from childhood. I have colleagues. I have friends from around the world. I got a friend who's just moved to Nairobi. And so it's a great community to, you know, come together and find support. And it's, I have a degree, yes, but sometimes I just give practical advice because it's just about being practical. It's not all being stuffy and professional all the time, because you can't relate to that.
Absolutely.
And what I would say to parents for your last thing, what I would say to you is when your kid is in a quiet moment, go up to them, just give them a hug or just give them a gentle touch and say their name, whatever it is, and tell them one thing that you really like that they did that day.
Oh,
Nothing big, or something that you like about them personally. Like, I love that you're so thoughtful, that you're kind, and just give them a hug and walk away.
yeah.
Nothing big. Um, Another thing I think is important in the mornings, mornings start our days, and often many of us are grumpy and like, oh, out of bed. But a smile in the morning is a really big, I think, treat for
Mm,
children to see, um, that can change the mood of the house. I think telling your kids why, writing them a note. So something that I do, my kids are quite younger, they're 5 and 7 right now, but writing notes for your children, and that especially with teens, because it's hard sometimes to say what you want to say,
yeah.
and it's hard to be vulnerable, especially with our parents. And I think sometimes it's hard for parents also to be vulnerable. If you weren't raised in a house of love and loving words and loving touch, it feels awkward. It really does. And so maybe leaving a note on in their book bag about what you like about them, or something that they've done that you have noticed over the years that's beautiful. Or maybe your child has an issue, ADHD, they're hyper, they've got this. Explain to them two things that you love about it. What
Oh,
do you love about their strengths? Children have strengths. And what's really sad to me, and this tells me how helpless parents are when they come see me at times. And I'm in the process of getting an online practice going, but you guys are all in the UK, so I don't think I can formally have any clients over there. But I was just think this just popped up in my mind when you said, how can they reach me? But when I see patients and I ask the parent in front of the kid, name me 3 things that your child does well, and the parent sits there and they can't think of something, it
oh,
is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to me, and it's heartbreaking to the kids. And I'm not saying that these are awful parents. So if I said to you right now and you're listening, name me 3 things that your kids do well that you love and you want to tell them, and you struggle to find those 3 things, the struggle lies within you. Your children do have value.
mm,
And maybe right now you are so stressed and you feel so helpless and hopeless that you can't see that. That's a cue. If you can, I know we're in COVID, and I've got lots to talk about on ways to cope with that. And that might be another thing
that's
we talk
another,
about sometime.
yeah.
But, but they need to hear that. And if you can't think of it, then maybe you need to step back as a parent. Take a deep breath. Why is it that I can't find anything positive in my children? I know parents who don't like their kids, and that's okay. You
Mm,
don't have to like your child. But
mm,
as you mentioned earlier, what you say is not our child, but in the sense that they're our care, our charge, right?
yes,
Our
yes,
children are our charge, but they're their own unique individuals. They need
absolutely.
to be given that space to grow into that.
Mm,
And so sometimes kids grow up and parents don't like them, and that's okay.
mm,
But you still have to respect your child, and you still, I think, as a parent, have to do your best
that's
to
right.
help set them up for success.
Yes.
And if you don't like them, you want them out of your house anyways. So
Yes.
you should be doing everything you can to get this kid to where they need to be to get out. So it's just about shine the light on your child this week. Not all the time. Don't go over the top, because they're going to be like, what you talking about,
Yeah,
please? They're not going to
not
believe what
here.
you got to say. Yeah. They're like, what do you want? What did
Yeah.
I do? But just try to make an effort to reach out, leave a couple notes, and tell your child positive things that you see in them that you really like. And
Oh,
I think that would definitely make a shift in the atmosphere at home.
oh, brilliant. Guys, that was so, so amazing. And I've learned quite a lot as well about, I write little notes, especially because mine's teenager. I text her, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the one thing I have learned is not to, sometimes they won't respond. You say, I love you. Don't sit there expecting I love you too.
Yeah.
They
It's
won't.
not don't,
It's
don't say it because you want to hear it. But that's the
yeah.
thing. That's exactly it. Say it because you want to say it. Don't say it expecting a response, because that's not a genuine I love you. You want to hear that anyways? Drives me nuts. Go ahead.
Yeah, just yeah, be like the sun, give,
Yeah.
and just give. That's what it does. Just give, right? Of
Yeah.
course, there is a point we need to also empower them to be able to give back, because it's
Yeah.
important to not just be a taker, but
Oh,
be
for sure.
yeah, but let them see you enjoy giving and actually want to do it. Yeah. So I am
Yes, absolutely.
so grateful for all those snippets that you've given us. That I just don't know how to thank you. So guys,
I'll give you a hug.
we get that hug. So guys, please go onto that onto the group. It's the Facebook is Dr. B, a perspective in parenting. Is that a perspective?
Perspective, I think on parenting or in. There's my dyslexia. I don't know. I don't know. But hopefully you'll find me. Yeah.
But what I'll do as well, when we post this on the blog, as always, we will put the link to those to all of your social media links.
Oh,
so yeah,
perfect.
so that should be good. And again, I am so thankful. I just don't know how to thank you, because I know you've given hope to loads of my friends and parents here who especially have atypical children, and it's okay to have those our kids. And Dr. B, you gave some beautiful insights about being hunters and gatherers and farmers, and I can already see where mine is.
But that's power, right? That's power in and of itself. You are empowering yourself, empower your kids. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And guys, I hope we feel more confident, especially to just love our kids as just as they are, and take those snippets that Dr. B talked about, go over to them, give them that hug, tell them they are important, remind them of what they are good at, remind them of who they are, of how beautiful they are, how amazing they are. Let's not go overboard, because they can sense when it's not genuine.
Yeah.
And also, let's not expect it back, because then that stops being a genuine giving. So again, thank you so much. And again, this is Angela, Raising Remarkable Teenagers, and our lovely guest today was Dr. B. And we hope to see you again soon, because I think we've hardly scraped that topic, to be honest. And the fun person you are. We love fun here. We love.
Oh, I love fun too.
All right then.
Love it.
Thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.